Hello and welcome to Meet the Candidates 2018, a voter education program brought to you by the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. My name is Rob O'Neill and I'm joined today by school board candidate Lori Fugate. Lori, thank you for being with us today, and why don't you start by giving us a little bit of background on who you are and why you're running.
All right, I am a about 23-year resident of Shakopee. I've had both my daughters go through the Shakopee School District. I was a vocal and active member of the watchdog group. We don't have an official name, but we are the ones that investigated this budget issue, and then we're also the ones that filed the initial charges to be investigated by the police department against Rod Thompson. So I was looking at it and I'm like, you know, I really need to run if I want to really affect change other than just being loud and vocal on social media. I've been married 30 years now, and I have two daughters. I have a granddaughter, and I have a business and management ethics degree from Crown College in St. Bonifacius. And I've volunteered in the community for years. I mean, Girl Scouts, church. I've been a leader. I did Sunday school teaching. I led the youth groups on Wednesday nights. I did Girl Scouts for two troops for years. I was also service unit registrar, and I won an honor pin from the Girl Scout Council because I serviced two different geographical groups. So that's all I have.
Well, let's hop into some of our questions. School board members serve under a board governance model, which means that the superintendent and the district administration manage and the school board and the members govern. Please explain these two roles and how they differ from one another.
Sure. The school board members are the people that set the policies and help the school district administration and the superintendent enact those policies, but they try to keep the school district personnel operating as a well-moving machine. They I don't know. This is too hard.
Well, let's move on to another question. So what do you believe that the fund balance should be for the school district, and when do you think we should get there, and what kind of ideas do you have for rebuilding the district's fund balance?
The fund balances should be at 20% according to the Minnesota School Association of Administrators. But we're at about $3 million right now. So we're about 3% of reserves, and to rebuild it, you're going to have to freeze the budget right off the top. We have to get the budget in line before we could start building the reserves back. The reserves should be a line item entry into the budget, like a savings account, and you have to freeze everything. It has to be done until you can make good cuts into the areas that aren't affecting the lower level people, like the teachers and the staff, because their salaries don't have as much of an impact, but the higher level like principals and people at this district might have to be frozen and or checked to see if there's redundancy or if we're doing too much with that and cut those people. You also need to look at the third-party contractors, attorneys, and consultants that we have. We have a lot of that, and we don't know how much that is running us. So you have to look for overlap there. Potentially look at outsourcing certain departments if it's feasible and fiscally responsible, like the finance department. It also will give the finance department a level of honesty towards the school district if the school district isn't their boss, where if they're a third-party contractor, and I'm talking like changing them from in-house to contractor but keeping the same people, and then that way they will give an honest viewpoint and feedback without fear or retribution or being told they have to do it, if that's what we're getting into. When I've been in positions where we've had to freeze the budget because of budget issues, the first things that are frozen is travel, food, frivolous stuff. It's not stuff that we have to check and make sure stuff isn't unnecessary to do. It has to be necessaries, not wishes. Get into the point of the school auditor always tells you that there's too much duplicity and overlap in the finance department. Maybe we need to take that step to be that school district that finally levels it out, where it's not too many people doing too many things, and actually break apart how it is set up. We were at 22% in reserves at one point back in 2012, and we've whittled it down to 3%. We just have to build it up, maybe start at 5% and keep seeing how that goes, but build it in as a line item in the budget and try to keep it.
Shakopee's approved referendum spend is a little over $700 per student. The state average is nearly $1,300, and comparable districts spend over $1,700. Is Shakopee spending enough per student, and what is your recommended per student allowance?
Shakopee is spending enough per student because when we're talking referendum spending, that's different than operational spending. 5 years ago, the district reserves were at $13.3 million, and at the end of the school year, last year they were about $1 million, slightly above that. The reserves were depleted by human error, theft, and poor oversight. The unfortunate thing is, when you're looking at local funding, we wouldn't have an issue with it right now if it wasn't for this overspend. We have to build the trust back with the taxpayers because we're spending our money to help keep this school district going. We're the fourth highest tax school district in the state. We looked that up. While the referendum money is for more bricks and mortar, we have to find a way to not ask the taxpayers for more money because the trust is broken and it's just not going to happen. If a voter-approved operating levy just won't pass right now, the school board has already hit their ceiling on allotted levies that they're allowed to pass for the next few years. So if they have to, without changing the budget and holding the budget in check, they're going to have to ask for a levy. And if they do have to ask for that levy for operating, they should always take an inch, not ask for the mile, because it's not going to fly any other way. We also have to rebuild our Moody bond rating, because right now when you have lost so much money due to low reserves and mismanagement, they keep downgrading you, so we end up paying more on our bonds because of that Moody bond rating. And the district right now receives a lot of money. We went from $67 million to nearly $84 million last year, and it was $67 million back in 2012. And now the money spent per student shot up from $8,400 per student to $11,000 per student last year, according to the statewide average. That's what that should be, and that was on the audit last year. So we actually are spending a lot on our own students. I think we should maintain that, not increase it any further, because we have to keep the operating levy at bay as much as possible until the trust is rebuilt with the school district.
So what is your view on the Academies of Shakopee model, and how will you ensure its success?
The Academies of Shakopee model is an innovative boost to our district, and it provides avenues to our students that they otherwise would not have compared to their non-academy counterparts. At first, I really was not sure about those academies because the information was too generalized to the majority of the community, especially since there's only about 8,000 children in the school district and we have 44,000 in the community at large. There was gaps in the information. The detailed answers were not there. We were just saying, oh, it's going to be great. You know, you get all the nice platitudes. So I met with one of the school board members recently, and I discussed that gap of information. He conceded there was a bit of a gap, and then he further explained what is different from the Academies program to now. For instance, math problems in, like, if you're normal kids, it's like the train takes off at Chicago at 55 miles an hour, the train takes off from Omaha at 65 miles an hour, calculate when they will meet in how many hours. Instead now, like in Health Services Academy, the math problem is now tailored to the health services field. You have an EMT, you have an unconscious person on the ground, you're guesstimating their weight to be about 150 pounds, how much of the medication you need to give. I think that is really cool because it gives you a practical application into what your career is going to be, whereas when you took algebra in high school way back in the day, you're like, why do I have to take algebra? It's doesn't have any application in real life. So I recognize that. They recognize there is a communication gap. I would suggest maybe holding some small town meetings, you know, like the small town hall meetings that we did like in March of last year, and see where that goes. I think that would be helpful, and then maybe have some action items from each of those town hall meetings. I would promote them. I would learn more about them. I will tell everybody that, hey, I was against it, so hey, I'm now for it now. I mean, I really am. It makes more sense now that I have a practical understanding of how it's supposed to work.
Well, if you were a student at Shakopee High School instead of a school board member candidate, which academy would you select and why?
Well, after I've been out of school now 35 years, I have always stayed in the business and entrepreneurship area. I was an executive administrative assistant. I have now started our own personal business at home. I was going to be an accountant. I was going to be a teacher, so I switched around, and then I finally ended up my degrees in management ethics, and it was mostly business. And that's why I would choose it. It would have more practical application. If I had maybe that head start back then, I might have liked it better instead of flopping around for like 30 years. Okay.
What has the existing board done well, and what would you be excited to continue?
The existing board has done well trying to fix the budget, trying to communicate more clearer and more transparent. They selected Gary Anger. That's the number one thing they did right. They selected Gary Anger to be the replacement for the former superintendent. They also brought in John McBroom as a temporary acting superintendent while Mr. Anger was sick. And they've been taking corrective actions, and they've established the Citizens Financial Advisory Group and the Citizens Communications Group. So I think those two things need to continue. I think they still also need to continue with some more small town hall meetings, and if those show that people aren't really coming to them, then do away with them. They need to continue with selecting a new superintendent, continue along with the academies. It actually does sound like a positive thing for the community. I do believe that, and you have to continue to rebuild the trust in the communication, transparency, openness with the community. They're making inroads in that. I'd like to see that continue.
Well, thank you, Lori. Thank you for watching Meet the Candidates 2018. Two reminders. First of all, the views expressed in these interviews are those of the candidates and not necessarily of the Shakopee Chamber and Visitors Bureau. We provide this as a service to help you, the voters of Shakopee, make up your minds as you head to the polling places this fall. Also, don't forget that voting day is Tuesday, November 6th. We hope you'll get out and vote. Thank you.